Emergency podcast, guys. One for the road. Skip Schumaker confirmed to be leaving the Marlins this offseason. Heads off 2 games early, dealing with a family situation. But Skip Schumaker has managed his last Marlins game. Where do the Marlins go next? Tons to get into on an emergency. Locked on Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to an emergency Locked On Marlins. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up at Miami Marlins _UK. And thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. It's your team every day, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Reminder to hit subscribe as well on the YouTube channel. Join me there in the comments. Let me know your thoughts specifically on the news. In effect, confirmation that Skip Schumaker will leave the Marlins this offseason. Let me know your thoughts on that one. He finished, in some ways, on the field in the perfect manner. The team gave him the exact perfect send-off. The team knew that he'd be leaving after the game today to go head home, unfortunately dealing with a death in the family. So best wishes and thoughts with Skip's family there on that one. Before we get into everything here, guys, and there is plenty to unpack here, this episode is brought to you by Booking.com and Booking.yeah, and the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. So, guys, for everyone waking up in the States, it's mid-morning time for you guys now. And we're all coming round to the news, the confirmation. I feel like that's the best way of phrasing this. It feels like this is the confirmation of what we expected. But let's just kind of summarize things here. Jess Passan reporting overnight. I mean, it was morning time for my time, so I kind of saw this, early in the morning. And the confirmation that Skip Schumaker is out as Marlins manager. We knew he was a free agent. We knew during the offseason and the changes with the front office that Skip and the Marlins negotiated a change to the contract structure. Headed into this campaign, and reminder, 2023, Skip Schumaker was the NL Manager of the Year. Yes, Kim Ang and Skip came together, and it was lightning in a bottle, as we know, for 2023 for the Marlins. A stunning campaign. So headed into this season, the second year for Skip Schumaker, the changes in the front office, Kim Ang exits the organization. And as part of that restructure in the front office, Skip Schumaker and the Marlins decided to waive the final club control year. It was a club option, team option for 2025. In the original deal, it was a 2+1. In the offseason, they make the change. Skip Schumaker was the one that initiated that. Let's be honest, the main reason why, is due to the fact that Kim exited the organization. I don't think this has anything to do with Bruce Sherman, Peter Bendix directly, at least not publicly. That's what's been shared. It was more about Kim and Skip, that combo. They had an amazing working relationship, and we saw firsthand what that working relationship could deliver. And it delivered a playoff team, the 5th seed in the NL, Miami Marlins in 2023. That's how good that combination was. Kim Ang managed that roster in 2023 to perfection. Skip Schumaker managed the roster that he was given to perfection. The team itself, okay, they exited the postseason in the wild card round. Anything can happen in the postseason, guys, but they got there as the 5 seed. Headed into this offseason, we were all looking around thinking, we know Sandy is missing. We know Sandy won't be a part of 24, but we've got enough of a rotation. We think we can manage Soler, decision to be made, but maybe we can get Soler back. Maybe we can run it back. It all changes on a dime. Peter Bendix into the organization, Kim Ang out of the organization, Skip Schumaker void a mutual agreement around a team option in 2025. The news broke relatively early into the season, although things, this had happened in the offseason. It broke, I think Bob Nightingale was the one that broke this news, that this had been arranged and agreed in the offseason. Obviously, the Marlins didn't start well. Their season was cooked very early. We all know this. And as soon as the news broke, I spoke about it on the show. It was clear to me at that point, Skip's gone. Skip is gone. And I, speculated at that point whether one of the drivers around this was, we know the vision. Bendix outlines the vision. Skip, we're not going to be good for 2024. We're not going to be good for 25, and we might not be good for 26. Are you in? I think is how I phrased it. He said no. Is that part of it? I think so. I think it's partly that. I think the rebuilds, this approach was on the cusp of happening. It just didn't happen in the offseason. I think Peter Bendix he bottled that. He bottled it. He wanted to start the season, maybe. I don't know. But nevertheless, Skip knew that he wasn't under club control, and it was his call. He wanted to maybe wait and see, was maybe how it was phrased. Let's see how this year goes. But I think, frankly, he was extremely disappointed that Kim Ang left the organization. And I think he knew the direction the Marlins were looking to take. Skip obviously is a West Coast guy. We know all of this. It's well publicized as well. We can talk about it all we want around. He wants to be closer to his family. I completely get that too. And that may feed into things as we kind of look ahead to Skip Schumaker and what his future holds in baseball. And I get that. But there's vacancies available right now. There's maybe vacancies that we aren't aware of right now. The season hasn't yet fully finished. Obviously, the postseason hasn't played out. We don't know how things are going to move around. What vacancies will there be? We'll wait and see. So in our minds, we're making the suggestion that he wants to be closer to the West Coast. I mean, is St. Louis, let's just kind of play it out. Let's say he lands in St. Louis or Cincinnati, in somewhere in the NL Central or the AL Central. Say he lands in a Central. I know it is geographically closer, from South Florida. I get that. I get it is. But that's the difference of what? I don't know. An hour and a bit on a plane? You're still significantly away from your family at that point. And so I'm very intrigued because a lot of people are making that, that is part of the dialogue here around Skip Schumaker, that it is wants to be closer to the family. Get it. And in theory, St. Louis or Cincinnati is closer to his family, but not that much closer. It's not, in my opinion, that isn't a deal breaker. And so again, that may be what's shared publicly. But my sense of this all is it started with the Kim exit. Skip was not on board with that. I don't think he's on board with the rebuild. And I think he wanted out. And he clearly got his wish. The Marlins were happy with that. And the reason he got his wish is because often with these situations, new president of baseball ops, new GM, whatever role it may be, new front office, they want their guy, seemingly. I'm going to talk about this after the ad, but what happens if you've already got the best guy? And I know sometimes you want your guy, but sometimes the guy that is already there is the best guy and maybe should be your guy. I wonder if the Marlins and Peter Bendix tried to convince Skip Schumaker to stay. We haven't heard anything of the sorts thus far. I don't know. We'll wait to see. Let's hit the first ads, and then we'll carry on this conversation around Skip Schumaker and whether the Marlins maybe look to engage in conversations with Skip, what the future holds for Skip, where he could land, what this says about the Marlins rebuild generally. If Skip doesn't want to be here, what does that say? Spoke about that on the pod earlier this week. We'll carry on with that. Before we do that, it's time to let you know about our good friends over at Robinhood. And with Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 per month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Welcome back, guys, to an emergency Locked On Marlins. My final one, in all likelihood, unless some serious news breaks in the next 2 days. I mean, this is serious news, but even more news breaks in the next 2 days. I'm kind of glad that this dropped because I was a little bit concerned I was never going to be able to do another emergency Locked On Marlins. So I'm delighted before I hang it up with Locked On Marlins that was able to hit it one last time, an emergency podcast. And the emergency is that Skip Schumaker confirmed to not be returning with the Marlins in 2025. He also leaves the team after yesterday's game, or well, this morning, I believe he will be traveling, but he won't be in the dugout for the final 2 games of the season. Nothing to do with the decision, everything to do with a death in the family. So prayers up to Skip and his family. I know, and I listened to him speak post-game. There was a lot of, naturally, like there was a lot of emotion. Like you could feel it through Skip's voice, through his body language, through everything. Naturally, death in the family. This is for you, Grandma, I think was the exact quote. With the Marlins spanking the Toronto Blue Jays, which is great to see. Skip informed the players before the game that he needs to travel home for the family situation. So Skip goes out from a management perspective with the Marlins on a high. The team performed, incredibly in that final game there for Skip. He'll be watching the next 2, I guess. We're keeping close eye on that. And let's kind of talk about Skip Schumaker here and the impact that he's made for the Marlins. Some people, I think it's fair to say, they don't believe that the impact a manager can. They just don't believe that a manager has an impact on the performance and the results of players, etc., etc. These are probably the people that live in the analytics world that you just turn up, right person, right hitter in the right spot, and everything will just happen. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe it one iota. I've seen like Skip Schumaker as a manager, as a leader of men. He's exactly what the Marlins organization, young group needs. Not specifically a young group, any organization needs. We saw what he did last year with a team full of vets. And it was loaded with vets last year. And, and there was a transition that took place in Skip's first year. Let's not forget that. Let's not forget that the Marlins moved on from Miguel Rojas, El Capitan, moved on. And it was predominantly to shake things up, I think, clubhouse-wise. I think they wanted to see how Jazz Chisholm Jr. could flourish without maybe the cloud hanging over him associated to Miguel Rojas and all his cronies from back in the day where, they were maybe trying to do what they felt was right. And it just didn't work. It didn't work for whatever reason. This isn't to slander Miggy Rowe or anything. Like, I get it. They probably had the best intentions. But for whatever reason, Jazz Chisholm Jr. and some of the younger guys, it didn't quite work for them. And I think this was, from Skip's perspective, like Mickey Rowe was still in the organization when Skip was appointed. He went and had dinner with him. They got to know each other. And then they quickly decided, he got to know others, and he quickly decided, let's move Miguel Rojas out of here. Let's start afresh. Let's reset the culture. And for me, that was one of the smartest things that Skip Schumaker did. Restart, prioritize the guys that look like building blocks, like Jazz Chisholm Jr., Jesus Sanchez, etc. They went and acquired a few more big clubhouse guys as well through the time. But, Luis Arias came in as well. So all of a sudden, you had a new fusion in the clubhouse. Luis Arias, Jazz Chisholm, Jesus Sanchez. You then had Berger and Bell later down the line. And this became the clubhouse core. And that's the point, is like Skip, whether it was him directly, whether it was Kim's, I don't know. But it was one of the smartest moves I think the Marlins made, just resetting the culture. And then Skip just letting everyone know the situation. Accountability. I always think of that word when I think of Skip Schumaker. Everything. He just ensures that everyone understands what's expected. Everyone understands their role. And everyone holds each other to account. That's Skip Schumaker in a nutshell. No doubt. And this is the exact perfect manager for any organization. I think Skip Schumaker is one of the best managers in the game. I know he's only been managing for a couple of seasons. And this is why it's so hard for Marlins fans, not all Marlins fans, some will be like, good. I'm glad Skip is gone. I've seen some of that on Twitter. I'm glad how can anyone possibly be glad that Skip Schumaker has just left the organization? That's a nonsense, an absolute nonsense for anyone with that opinion. Listen, everyone is entitled to their opinion. I get it. But man, oh man, how can you form that opinion? How is that opinion formed? I don't know. Crazy. It's clear as day to see just what impact, and everyone. The thing is, no, I've not heard not one whisper, echo, anything of a bad, negative word about Skip Schumaker. Everyone, players, ex-players, media, coaches, you name it, everyone is a true Skip believer. And the thing is, just thinking about the impact, the Marlins this year have not been good, obviously. They've been stripped of talent before the season, early in the season, at the deadline, after the deadline. And it isn't just like trades. It's, who do you sign? Who's on the IL? Who do you trade? When do you trade them? All of these things constantly going on. Skip Schumaker has had to manage over 70 players on his active roster this year. 70 players. But Skip has never wavered. It's been a crap year. Really crap. The performance coming off the back of 23 is super disappointing. And there's been some tough moments. But man, oh man, when you see the way Skip deals with everything, pre-game, post-game, during the game, everything's done the right way. Everything's done with his head held high because he comes in with the right mentality every day. I'm here to win, and I expect everyone else to be the same. And everyone is the same. The talent isn't there to deliver what they're, the overall goal, which is postseason baseball. The talent isn't there. That's not Skip's fault. He doesn't own that responsibility. He manages with what he has got. And to be honest with you, and I mentioned this on Twitter earlier, if there was a manager war stat, in my opinion, Skip's had a 15 war campaign. Without Skip Schumaker, in my opinion, this year, things could have spiraled to a point where the Marlins lost 120 games. We've seen that elsewhere this season. We've seen how it can spiral. And, frankly, the White Sox, in many ways, have had more talent on their roster this year. They haven't been able to do anything with it. The culture stinks. They're playing like they don't care. That starts with the manager. That's the type of thing that could spiral. The heads go down. You start 0-9, heads down. Next thing is you're kicking balls around. We've seen none of that with the Marlins. None. And where we've seen any slight hint, and I think some of it's been a touch unfair, but Jesus Sanchez, was pulled from a game. One or two others pulled from a game where maybe they weren't doing it 100%. Skip Schumaker will not stand for that. And the guys are in there in the clubhouse trying every day. They're trying to win every day. The roster isn't good enough to win every day. The roster isn't good enough to win 2 out of every 3 days. The roster's been good enough to win once every 3 days, basically. But without Skip Schumaker this season and this type of culture, I'm telling you, this Marlins roster would have won 40 games, 45. And yeah, okay, does it really matter that they're going to win, 60 games, 61, 60, whatever the number may be? The Marlins are going to be picking in the top 5. We expect top 1, hopefully. But that isn't as a byproduct of anything that Skip has done on a negative sense. Skip has kept it rolling every single day. Every single day. And wherever he lands, he's going to be a huge asset for wherever he lands. This often happens, right? We see this. We've seen it already this season with players that have exited, and we're going to see the same with Skip Schumaker. Because, listen, guys, we watch the Marlins. We understand talent. We maybe get down on some other talent, but we know what's there at its core. Because of the Miami market, most people don't. Most people aren't watching closely. They're not watching closely to see how good Luis Arias was last year. They weren't. Drips and drabs, maybe. But most people aren't watching the Marlins. He then goes to San Diego, and next thing is it's a love fest for Luis Arias. You then get Jazz Chisholm Jr., the most overhyped player in Major League Baseball. He comes out of Miami, goes to New York, lights it up. 40 stolen bags, by the way. 40-40 tracker still rolling. Jazz lights it up. Everyone, all of a sudden, Jazz Chisholm Jr., what a stud. We've known he's a stud for years. It's been clear as day. Tanner Scott, he's a stud. Next thing is, yep, he's a stud. AJ Puck, yep, he's a stud. Yep, he's a stud. We're going to see exactly the same with Skip Schumaker. He's going to land somewhere, a bigger market. Unless he goes to the Rays, it's impossible not to go to a bigger market, frankly. So he's going to land somewhere, and all of a sudden, we're going to get, let's just say he lands in Seattle as a shout. It's a vacancy, known vacancy on the West Coast. Granted, it's still a bit of a schleck from California, but let's say he goes to Seattle. I can tell you right now that Skip Schumaker will be in the mix for AL Manager of the Year in 2025. I'm convinced of it because he's one of the best in the game. The Mariners will bounce back. They'll find a way to hit again. And the pitcher's there. Next thing is, everyone will be like, man, Skip Schumaker is one hell of a manager. Unreal manager. And the Marlins fans will be left there scratching their heads going, yep, we let another one get away. And that's the frustrating bit here for the Marlins fans. And for me, for the Marlins fan base generally, maybe not everyone, because some people don't really care about the manager. They don't think that the manager impacts the game, the results. But in my opinion, and hearing how Skip is, I am certain, without any doubt, zero doubt, that Skip Schumaker impacts games, both in terms of the culture he sets, the preparation the guys put in, the decisions he makes. Sometimes he gets them wrong, and he's called that out himself. That's what I love about too. Holds himself to account. But Skip Schumaker impacts games for the Marlins. They've won games this season because of Skip, and maybe they lost one or two along the way because of a decision or two. But I'm convinced that Skip directly has led to wins for the Marlins. Let's hit the final ad and then carry on. Think about what this means, what the rebuild is looking like. Why is Skip gone now? Was he always leaving? I think he probably was. But where did the Marlins go from here? Before we do that, let's let you know about our good friends over at Booking.com. And this episode of Locked On Marlins is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. And you can explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about at other baseball cities. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival city during the postseason. Maybe it's time to taste test your baseball competition stadium cuisine. Luckily on Booking.com, you can find the stadium stay that's just right for you. And it delivers exactly the right US stay for you. It can help you book a stay that's close to your home team's or rival team's stadium. The right stay can make you a fan of any US city, even your baseball rivals. It's Booking.com, Booking.yeah. This episode is also brought to you by PrizePicks. It's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app and has over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in, baby. It's the best way to get in on the action on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. And you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. They have a stunning offer on right now. You simply need to download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Final segment here on Locked On Marlins. An emergency Locked On Marlins. Skip Schumaker confirmed to be leaving the Marlins after the 2024 campaign. Is this a surprise? No. Is this what was expected? Yes. The Marlins and Skip came to an agreement in the offseason. They will void the club option for 2025. Here's a question for you. Just thinking about it. Let's assume that that club option wasn't voided in the offseason. Skip then walks into this offseason. Do we think the Marlins execute that option or not? I've just been thinking about that then, thinking, I wonder if the Marlins would have just moved on anyway. It's easy for them now because they've mutually agreed that situation. Skip was always going to be a free agent this offseason. But I do wonder, considering new president of baseball ops, Peter Bendix running the show, considering everything else that's going on and the typical assessment of, we're going to get a new guy. You're going to pick your guy, so to speak. I do wonder if Bendix would have exercised the option anyway. I don't know. Speculation, I guess. Nevertheless, Bendix he's got plenty of things to work on this offseason, one of which looks to be appointing a GM, which I think is to be expected, and will help take a little bit of the pressure off him. Like, it's clearly, when you have a gap in the structure, you have to cover that role, and the GM is a role. Peter Bendix has been playing that role as well as some of the wider responsibilities. And now we turn our attention to selecting a new manager. Just on that, by the way, just thinking about selecting your guy. For me, again, when I think the Skip Schumaker joining the organization, there's a couple of things that he nailed, in my opinion, right off the bat. I've already spoke about one of them, and it was moving on from Miguel Rojas to reset the culture. Start fresh. The other one was that he handpicked all of his coaching staff. He was allowed to handpick all of his coaching staff. However, the mistake he didn't make, and the right choice that he made, was continuing to keep Mel Stottlemyre Jr. as well. It could have been easy for Skip to rock into the organization and go, I want my guy, of course, and move on from Mel Stottlemyre Jr. It would have been a mistake. It would have been a huge mistake. And I love the fact that Skip was able to recognize the talent. Game recognizes game, I think is how I phrased it on Twitter earlier. And again, that kind of gets to the point around Bendix, around, the decision was kind of taken out of his hands. But I do wonder what the decision would have been. Is Bendix just wanted his own guy irrespective? Would he have moved on from Skip Schumaker irrespective? I don't know. I would have liked to have seen that play out just to get a sense of the decision-making process and whether he would have been brave enough maybe to make that move. I don't know. Because like I said right at the top of the show, for me, the Marlins have their guy. Peter Bendix has his guy. And I know you can consider, well, We want an analytically driven manager, whatever that may mean. I don't even know what that, does that mean you just want a robot? Do you just want a robot and a rah-rah guy and someone to submit a lineup? Then fine. Maybe that isn't Skip, but I don't get it. I don't get why that's what you'd want. Is it just that Peter Bendix wants to actually have full responsibility of every minor move and every minute detail? Is that what they really want? I don't think. I mean, is that really sustainable? I don't think so. I don't think so. Nevertheless, guys, we're 30 minutes in. I'm delighted I got to hit one final emergency pod. I am not delighted around the subject matter and the reason why this, I guess, information has been accelerated. But nevertheless, Skip Schumaker, I thank you. I thank you as a Marlins fan and as a podcast host, but I thank you as a Marlins fan for the last 2 seasons. I think you've overachieved in both seasons, which seems crazy to say when the Marlins are probably going to be picking first in 2025. But I still think you've overachieved considering the tools that you had at your disposal. I wish Skip Schumaker nothing but the best and his family. I'm very interested to see where he lands in terms of his next role. He will be highly coveted. He is the number 1 manager available in the market right now, and irrespective of who else is available, Skip Schumaker, in my opinion, will be the number 1 guy. Teams will look to make moves quickly. We'll see if Skip Schumaker is maybe the first manager that's appointed. There's vacancies with the Reds, with the Mariners, the White Sox. There's some other potential interesting situations that could become available. Man, what are the Dodgers going to do? Could Skip Schumaker be a fit with the Dodgers, maybe? We'll wait to see what the Dodgers, how their season plays out in the end. We'll wait and see on that one. But for Skip Schumaker, wish you nothing but the best. I think you've been an incredible Marlins manager. NL Manager of the Year, deservedly so in 2023, taking the Marlins back to the postseason for the first time in 20 seasons in a 1-6-2 campaign. I'm very interested in the final piece on Skip. I'm very, very interested to see in the future, and it may not be the next move. It may be one after. It may be during his tenure. But I do wonder if we get the Kim Ang, Skip Schumaker hook up again somewhere. Could you see Kim Ang and Skip Schumaker in Seattle? Could you see them in Chicago? Maybe. I don't know. It's clear they had a great working relationship. It's clear they were able to overachieve using their combined skills. Skip Schumaker is going to be a great manager for a long time. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen, guys. Hope you've appreciated and enjoyed my final emergency Locked On Marlins. I look forward to seeing you guys very, very soon.